So it's not for kids.
You ever seen the movie Tenet?
I'm pretty sure we talked about Tenet on the cast.
I've watched it in the future.
And you're coming back to tell you about how it ends?
They like walk backwards, but like not like through time. Like they just literally physically walk backwards while shooting at the end. And that's how they defeat the bad guys.
My daughter always walks backwards and runs into things. Do you think she's actually just already experienced life and is like sequencing back through it or something? Maybe she is the wise one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like that's the most likely explanation for her behavior.
We need that Benjamin Button Tenet crossover.
Forget about whatever the MCU is doing. We got to get that to happen. Benjamin Button versus
Do you want to tell
spies.
the audience why we're talking about Tenet?
We'll see if they're listening to this episode. They might catch on to some incongruencies with our timeline because we are recording a little bit in advance.
Yeah, you're actually peering into the future, and then the episode you hear next week is the current one. So we're actually a week in the future here. Mm-hmm. Tom, what do you think about the robot uprising via ChatGPT that just started this week? That's kind of nuts, huh?
I think anyone could have, maybe should have seen this coming. I only wish I'd done a little more training and watched Terminator a few more times and taken notes. But, you know, here we are. We just got to deal with it.
It's wild that Dr. Knizia released 10 games this week. Actually, That's not wild. He does that all the time.
Yeah, it's like actually, like he literally just does that every week.
That's like one of my dogs pooping in the house when it rains. Like, I could have told you that.
Your dogs do that?
Yeah, Kona will just refuse to go to the bathroom outside when it's raining. And I mean, I feel that. Like, I wouldn't want to do that.
You're like, I relate.
Can you imagine?
No.
Like, even with a fur coat, I don't want to poop outside when it's raining. I guess I wouldn't want to poop outside when it wasn't raining, but like... So she'll just be like, no, I'm good. And she just like stands by the door. I'm like, go poop. I know you need to. And she's like, no, I'm good. And she comes back in. And as soon as I like stop looking at her, she goes in a corner and poops inside. Normally she's fine, but like, yeah, this is much more comfortable. Again, don't blame her. Except this time I was cleaning the poop and then she peed while I was cleaning the poop. And I was like, are you serious? You couldn't like do it all at once. You couldn't like do like a batch upload.
Yeah.
And she peed in the middle of the toys too.
Like it wasn't like peeing on the floor corner.
Yeah, it was on like one of those IKEA, play mats that has the city. The city is drowning in pee right now. I just remembered I need to move that to the dryer.
Like actually right now?
No, I mean it can wait. But
okay.
Those people are just going to have to suffer through another tornado hurricane for a little bit.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Rest in peace, people of IKEA City. We'll get back to you after this podcast. Anyway.
You ever seen The Life and Times of Tim?
Welcome to Shelf Stable, a podcast celebrating board games that have stood the test of time. I'm your host, Kenny Katayama.
And I'm your other host, Tom Browers. This week, we're talking about the motherfucking Board Game Geek Hall of Fame. But before we get to that, let's talk about some of the things we've just been, just like playing. Just the stuff that we just play.
That was good, The Life and Times of Tim non sequitur.
Thanks.
I don't think we take enough time during the episodes to like pat ourselves on the back or like, review the tape and stuff. So
okay, is this going to lead into the game you're about to talk about somehow? I'm like, is this the segue?
So speaking of, I played the Red Cathedral from 2020. This is our first 2020, I believe.
Whoa.
I think we were like a little afraid to touch it, but
the new era has begun.
Designed by Isra C and Shei S, published by Devir. The Red Cathedral is a very Euro-y Euro where you have a kind of a dice Mancala rondel thing to collect resources, and then you use the resources to deliver contracts that convert into victory points. But I will say, like, going into it, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy it. I don't think it's going to, like, knock it out of the park or anything. It'll just be a swell time, because that's typically how these kind of resource conversion games play out. Like, I'm just like, oh, it was really fun. I enjoyed it. I'm not, like, wowed by it. The Red Cathedral had a little something. It had a little, je ne sais quoi.
Well,
first of all, it's beautiful. It's a really pretty game. But also, it's like delightfully interactive. I felt like even though it wasn't like breaking the mold of, it's not a direct confrontational game, but there was a decent amount of, I'm explicitly taking this to screw you over, or like, oh, you messed me up and things like this. I played it with my significant other, and it was like the perfect balance of being able to affect each other without being too mean to each other. And I really respect a design that can kind of like balance that boundary. I only played it a couple times, but it had a decent amount of like replayability baked into it. A lot of these games, they have like modular components when you set up different powers that are available. This game had it too, but they dramatically changed the game. Sometimes I feel like it's just like, oh, this person's producing stone instead of wood this time. Like, it's not actually a different game. It's just like a different puzzle. Mm-hmm. But this one, like, the second game that we played, you could dump all your money to get as many resources as you want. That, like, dramatically changes the game when normally you don't have that conversion ability available. So I really was delighted by that aspect. The last thing I want to say is just, I really liked how concise and short the game is. Longtime listeners are not going to be surprised that this is often a thing we look for or something that we compliment. I really like a game that isn't bloated, where everything feels meaningful and where it doesn't overstay its welcome. And I felt like the Red Cathedral was snappy, both time in between turns as well as just overall game length. It felt like I had done something really substantial, but like we also didn't sit there for 3 hours. I was very delighted with the Red Cathedral. I love the small form factor too. Devir does these tiny boxes, big game. And it makes me interested to try some of the other ones out.
Sounds really interesting. What's the
theme?
Yeah.
It's Ivan the Terrible ordering the building of the Red Cathedral.
Okay.
There's different configurations of it too, which is kind of fun. They all kind of end up looking like penises. I'll be perfectly honest.
What?
But that is like another aspect.
Might be a pro in some cases.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, they always have like kind of round sides to them and then a really long shaft in the middle of towers.
You think it was intentional? You think that's what the guy was going for? Like the king?
Oh, the king?
Yeah.
Ivan? Probably.
If Ivan was like, yeah, make it penis shaped.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Sex and power go together.
I mean, that's what they did with like Washington Monument, when you think about it.
I think buildings are very often associated with phallic symbols.
I'm not sure if this is spitting or cringe, but it's an observation we're making here.
You could say that buildings are the trucks of the olden days.
Buildings are the trucks of the olden days. Elaborate.
You're trying to compensate or you're trying to assert something about yourself. So you get a bunch of people that are probably either underpaid or slaves to build a giant thing for you to show how big you are.
Oh, okay. Interesting game.
Yeah,
okay,
we'll see if any of that makes it into the actual episode.
Good luck.
The Red Cathedral. Disclaimer: Tom and Kenny do not have a cultural science background. I wouldn't take anything about phallic imagery as the official word. They're probably entirely wrong.
Neither of us have history degrees. All right, well, penises aside, I played a game. I've been playing this actually kind of a lot recently, which is Hive Mind from 2016. Remember that year? This is designed by Richard Garfield, which I find interesting because he has a PhD, but he apparently does not put that on the boxes of his games. But I know it's like a big meme, at least when he worked like at Magic the Gathering. Richard Garfield of Magic the Gathering fame and published by Calliope Games. It's not pronounced Calliope, despite how it looks.
Oh, I didn't know that.
This is a lightweight party game, admittedly. Very simple. Basically, you're given a prompt. They'll say something like, name the 5 best condiments, and you need to write down as many answers as you can that will match with as many other people as possible, because your goal is to stay in the hive. The first player to fall all the way out of the hive for just failing to meet the threshold to stay in, basically every turn there will be at least one loser, and they get pushed out. And if they fall out of the hive, they lose, and everyone else technically wins. It's definitely a game where like winning and losing is not the main thrust. It's more about the social atmosphere and kind of like the debates that this game somewhat invites. I'll say this: there's a wide variety of questions. There are just a crap load of cards in there, and they have like three suggestions on each side, and then each card also reminds you that you can make up any question you want. I highly recommend that people try and make up questions, and I also highly recommend that people try and go for like superlatives, like, you know, what are the best, what are the worst? Because if the question is oriented in that way, it can become funny because, like, for example, we wrote, what's the 3 best fast food restaurants? I wrote McDonald's. Rip to our McDonald's fans out there. McDonald's fans to me is not even quite A tier, but it's consistent, right? It's like I'll go there, I'll eat it. It's never blowing me away, but I'm never like unhappy to end up at McDonald's exactly. So I'm like maybe A, maybe B tier. I'm not sure if it's my personal pick for number 1. I wrote it down anyway because I figured a lot of other people might end up writing McDonald's.
Right, the hive mind.
Exactly. Yeah. And it worked out, much to one of the other players' chagrin. It's fun to just sort of explore what your friends think. Would you agree, what you disagree on? It's a little bit of a sad moment to get kicked out of the hive, but you can always remind that person or persons that they are the most hipster among you and they think the most differently. So maybe that's a good thing if you're into individualism.
Yeah, there's always like somebody when we play games like this that's like, I know that I shouldn't write this, but I'm going to write it out of principle. Mm-hmm. You know, more props to them. I have no spine. So even if I hate the Transformers movies, if I'm surrounded by a bunch of robot fans, I'm going to write Transformers when they say like best movie of all time. Like, I don't care. You know, I want those sweet points. I want to stay part of the hive. But like, I understand there are people who are like, I can't write McDonald's because I would be doing a disservice to myself, to my family, to the country. Like, I refuse, even if it means I get kicked out, you know?
So-called free thinkers when Transformers comes up as an option when you're playing with robot fans. Mm-hmm.
Don't you hate it when that happens?
Yeah.
Robot fans are the worst, by the way, especially since the ChatGPT uprising that happened this week. It's like insane. They're like, we told you so. And now I'm making out with my robot significant other, and y'all are in robot jail. Like,
yeah, you gotta be careful, man. Well, I mean, like this kind of stuff can land you in jail with like the robotism accusations and things, huh?
At least they were willing to let us keep our microphones here in robot jail, so we'd be able to record this and send it to the past. Can you imagine if we actually had the technology to send a communication a week before a robot uprising, and we're just talking about Hive Mind by Richard Garfield?
Yeah. Just continuing the podcast from robot jail. I think that'd be fitting given the state of the world.
Yeah, I feel like, that's probably what we would do. These two poor souls.
Hey, look, you can play Hive Mind in jail pretty easily. It actually might make a great gift for anybody you know that's behind bars.
Ever since they banned Tom's Sexy Dice Game with the new robot regime, it's been a different lifestyle. Are you done with Hive Mind?
Yeah, you know, that was Hive Mind from 2016.
Sorry. No, I didn't mean like, are you done? I meant like, I didn't want to diverge too much.
I am. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. The doctor's back. Dr. Knizia, he's here. He also has a PhD, I guess, hence the doctor.
Either that or a medical degree. I don't know.
So how do you feel about this? I feel like the PhD should be listed when it's related to what we're talking about, but it shouldn't when it's not related. That's my theory.
I just think it's funny to mention it when it comes to Richard Garfield because it's like a meme.
Yeah. Well, it's a PhD in mathematics, right? Which is related to board games. So I feel like it's okay. But like Knizia's PhD is in like houses or something.
A doctorate in houses?
I'm looking it up now.
PhD in what are houses? Yeah.
Knizia PhD. PhD in mathematics as well. So not houses. I've been working on my PhD for houses. It's like the worst. The exams are like, is this a condo? And I'm like, I think so. And they're like, no, it's a studio, you idiot. I got to do my dissertation on tiny homes next.
Yeah.
It's just like,
I mean, it's like that TV show, right? Like Dr. House.
Yeah. And the worst is when you get a royal visit to one of the houses. This is Royal Visit from Reiner Knizia, 2006. You like what I did there? Publisher Iello.
Yeah. That's good.
Royal Visit is a 2-player only back and forth tug of war. We've talked about Hanami Koji before. Royal Visit felt very Hanami Koji like. You basically get a deck of cards that you go through twice and the game ends, and the cards allow you to move the 5 characters either closer to you or to certain locations on the board. Each character has a different power, and the king is the most important one because kind of like chess, if you get the king on your side, you win the game. I thought it was interesting. I appreciate that it was short, but I kind of was just like, why would you play this over Hanami Koji? Because like in Hanami Koji, you got to like think like, oh, they're going to want this, so I'm going to do this, so I do this. And like there's like a back and forth. In this game, you like play card, thing moves. There's nothing they can do to stop you. On top of that, there's a thing where if you play a card, you're allowed to play as many cards of that character, of that suit in sequence. So at least in practice, we just ended up playing whatever we had the most copies of in our hand so that we could basically get a character from one side to the other. I mean, there are a few interesting decision points you have where you're like, oh, I have to move this even though I want to move this other one. Because even though it's less efficient, it's going to be better for me in the long run. But I just came out of this being like, it's a game. Maybe I'm not giving it enough credit. Maybe it's in classic Knizia fashion. It's like one I have to unfold. And then I start seeing all the nuance and the depth. But at least in the plays I did, I was like, yeah, it's good. It's fine. Can't believe I'm saying this about a Knizia game. They're going to remove my membership to the Knizia club.
Yeah. You gotta watch out.
I mean, it was still better than a lot of games I've played. I'm not complaining. That's the thing with Knizia games. Like even when they're not, oh my god, this is the most amazing game I've played, they're still good. So yeah, that was Royal Visit.
It's a game you can play. All right, Kenny. Well, you and I played this one together recently, actually, and that's Res Arcana from 2019. This one's designed by Thomas Lehmann of Race for the Galaxy fame, published by Sandcastle Games. And this is a game where you are wizards, I think, trying to...
alchemists.
Oh, right.
I believe.
I
could be wrong. It could be wizards.
You are alchemists, wizards of some kind, people that like to experiment with magical elements and recombine them. And you're trying to transform them into various things, and then I suppose collect enough of them to trade in for like a really nice house.
I looked it up. They're mages. And they're trading it in for power.
That's right. They're called like the places of power.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically you're a low-level, chemist in a magical world trying to save up enough health potions to buy a dragon lair.
It's basically every isekai ever.
More or less, yeah. You have cooled on this game, as I understand it.
It's just one of those games I thought I would love that I always try again, and I'm like, eh.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we played this, you set it up for us in a way where we skipped the drafting portion, which is understandable considering how many of us were new to the game. There's already enough to kind of figure out. without overwhelming people with a draft, and especially a draft when you don't really understand what you're trying to do. I'd like to play this again with the drafting element kicked in, because I think a draft of this would be the most interesting thing about this game is draft decisions. I'll describe the gameplay. Personally, I felt like it's the game that has the most made me feel like I'm playing something akin to Magic the Gathering than many of these other like battle royale type card games in a box tend to feel for whatever reason. I think it has something to do with the fact that like you do end up kind of tapping the resources and exhausting them. That's definitely part of it. But I think it's also just that like you're sort of just constructing a value engine and drawing a very limited number of cards. I'm not sure why exactly it reminded me of Magic more than a lot of these other ones. Maybe also
no,
the
I
theme.
can see that. I see that. It definitely feels like Magic certain times when you start getting things clicking together.
Yeah, exactly. I liked this. I might have been a little bit lucky with the setup I got, and I won, which was nice, so that's always a plus. I can see why maybe you don't love this. Maybe it's probably just a little bit like cube pushy. You're just arbitrarily executing, movements into value. Everything trades like 3 to 4, 4 to 6 type stuff. There's a couple of combos that can be kind of flashy, kind of interesting.
It's weird because I like cube pushing games and I like games that distill things. And what this game is, it's like cube pushing distilled to its purest core.
Uh-huh.
So you think I would like it, but it almost feels like the magic is gone. Like for me, once it gets,
they took out the magic and just left you with the gathering.
Yeah, there's just the gathering, I guess. Like it's so weird. Again, this game should be a game I love, and I keep trying to love it, and somehow it's not compelling me. I'm really glad you enjoyed it because I feel like you and the others at the table are feeling what I want to feel, and I'm just not able to get there for some reason.
It's a bit of a lonely experience. I feel bad for you. I wish I could tell you, I wish I could articulate for you why I'm like, okay, hold on, they're cooking with this. There wasn't really anything specific. I just, I think it made me feel a little bit like I was clever for, noticing things, for, leveraging the resources, for timing things. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm doing a good job selling it to other people either. If they're, listening to this, they're just like, what the fuck is the fucking point of this game? It's an interesting one. It's one I want to go back to. I think if I've drafted it a lot, maybe I ought to try this out on Board Game Arena because you mentioned it being on there. I'd be curious to see if I reach a point where I'm like, oh, Pog, I know exactly what the archetype I'm going for is, the combos, I love that feeling in a Magic draft when you understand kind of the heuristics, you understand when you need to kind of pivot off of just taking the best card and looking for the more synergistic cards and stuff. And I could see this game really being that.
Yeah, I want to give this another shot with the draft too. And I know this is going to be the fourth time that I'm like, oh, I got to try it again because maybe this time. But I still haven't done the draft, and I feel I would enjoy it a lot more.
Okay, yeah.
Because every time I play with new players, so
right.
Because I know there are listeners right now who are like, what? You didn't play with the draft? That's like playing Terraforming Mars without the draft. You're crazy.
That's even just from my cursory experience. That's how I feel. It's a completely different game. Yeah.
The draft kind of smooths things out. I probably would enjoy it more with the draft.
What you're saying though is that you're like I don't give a shit though because I'll finish the draft and then I'm back to playing Res Arcana, which so far has been whatever.
I guess there's a question mark. Maybe that's the key. Maybe the draft is the key.
Okay.
I don't think so, but who knows?
If anything's gonna save this game for Kenny, it's gonna be the fact that the draft is interesting, but maybe it's not. Maybe it just sucks.
Maybe a canna or a cannata save it.
Maybe. I'm not gonna. I don't know. I'm gonna indulge that one.
Respect.
That was Res Arcana from 2019.
100 games to play before you die.
Welcome to the part of the podcast where we talk about the 100 games that you need to play before you turn 100 years old. Rest in peace, Jimmy Carter. Game number 22 this week is The Resistance, Avalon. For those that are new to this segment, this is the part of the podcast where we talk about the list of games that Kenny came up with that he thinks represent the entire diaspora of what board gaming can offer and how you can, in only 100 games, which is a lot, admittedly, experience everything this world has to offer. Kenny, The Resistance Avalon from 2012. Why is this one on the list?
Why didn't you put Blood on the Clocktower? Why don't you put Blood on the Clocktower as your choice? Because Blood on the Clocktower takes 8 hours to play. And anybody that says, oh, I play Blood on the Clocktower with my grandma every weekend, and we only take an hour to play it, I don't want to hear it. You can send your complaints to whoever made Blood on the Clocktower.
shelfstablegames@gmail.com.
Yeah, gmail.biz or whatever. Don't send them to me because I do not care. Blood on the Clocktower is fine. I'm not like a Blood on the Clocktower hater because I heard that if you ever hate on Blood on the Clocktower, they do bad things to you. It is long. You know what's the same experience, but it only takes maybe an hour? The Resistance.
The same experience? Okay, hot take, but you're right.
It's the same experience. Well, it's like, yeah, The Resistance Avalon, you got different roles. People are lying. Some are good, some are bad. Mm-hmm. It's the quintessential social deduction game.
The classic.
So on one side of the spectrum, you have werewolf/mafia, and on the other end, you have Blood on the Clocktower. I guess it's a little bit of horseshoe theory because they're both overly long. Whereas Blood on the Clocktower is like finely tuned, Werewolf is like untuned, and The Resistance is somewhere in the middle. The Resistance addresses the player elimination problems that Werewolf has. It's still simple enough that you can introduce it to a new group and they can hit it right away, and it doesn't have to be overly long, I guess. I just really like how pure The Resistance feels. It feels like a game that if it didn't have its theme, whether it be the original Resistance or Avalon, it could have been like a game that you play with a deck of cards that like people have been playing since the beginning of time kind of thing. At its core, for those who aren't familiar, you are all secretly either good or bad. The bad people are trying to get others to believe they're good so that they can get on these missions and fail them. If you fail 3 out of the 5 missions, the bad people win. If you win 3 out of the 5 missions, the Resistance wins. And the more you get along, the harder it is to win those missions. So you could have won an early mission, but it only required like 2 people to go on it. And there was a bad person. They were just pretending to be good and succeeding it. And oh no, later on, they've been throwing a wrench in things since the beginning. You only get slivers of information, but those pieces of information are sometimes semi-accurate and oftentimes like 100% true. And so you get enough where you can start to have this information that you deduce, this map of what everyone is doing and why they played certain ways. And the beauty of The Resistance is that somewhere near the end, you're like, I figured it out. I know all of it. And I want to say 50% of the time you feel like a genius and you actually knew exactly who everybody was. And the other 50% of the time you were just completely misled by your spouse because you trust them fully with your life and they happen to be the spy, you know? So it's a game that delights. We have a wonderful story about The Resistance. It was one of our game group's members, John's birthday, and we played a game of The Resistance. And while we had our eyes closed and we said, spies, open your eyes, his nose made like a whistling sound, like he breathed in and it whistled. And then his significant other was like, John's a spy. And then we were like, how do you know? And she was like, his nose whistled.
She just instantly throws the whole game out of whack with that.
Yeah, and the worst part was like she was 100% right. The other spy started to defend John and was like, oh, like, what does that mean? Anybody's nose could have whistled. You know, he could have just been nervous and stuff. And like, or he could have just breathed in when he had like a booger in his nose or something.
Right.
But like, she was like very firm. She was like, no, his nose would never whistle if he wasn't a spy. And it just like threw off the whole game. They almost got us to believe that it was all bull and, you know, she was crazy, but she was just so convinced and sure. And she was right. And like, in the end, we're like, okay, we trust you. You know him well enough. And yeah, sure enough, like most of the time, that's not going to be the thing. That's the interesting thing. Like,
right.
It's not a game about tells and lies really, as much as like figuring out the info and getting the right info from the right people at the right time. So the tells play a part, but they play a part in like learning the right things, not in figuring out if the person is lying or not. And that's what I like about this over werewolf. I know you're not like, you're not opposed to, but you're not huge on social deduction. I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on social deduction as a whole? And then what are your thoughts on the resistance specifically?
Social deduction as a whole. Yeah, I waffle a little bit. I've come around to these types of games, I think, more than maybe I used to be. It's just like they drive interaction. Everyone's having fun. With these type of social deduction games, just in general, I think when you've played them enough, they start to feel almost like a little bit repetitive. In general, they kind of, I think, like just create like stress for me, where I'm just like, I don't know who to trust. Do I trust you this time? Do I trust you this time? Last time I trusted you and it didn't work out. Last time I trusted you and it did work out. But you could be lying to me this time because you're taking advantage of the fact that I'm trusting you this time. And like, it's definitely one of those things where like it's more fun after the fact than it is during the fact. And it tends to go a little longer than I'd personally like. Like either we figure it out really quickly and it's just like, oh, whatever, or it's like down to the wire and like the entire table is like pissing their pants with like anxiety. And not really sure that I care much for either of those feelings when I play a game. I'm more into like it being a leisurely activity. I think that's what's going on for me with these types of games. But I commend this. Intense. Yeah, I will say something like this does need to be on this list because it is an experience that's, I think, pretty particular to board games. I think it's like one of the top 10 most board game experiences you can have is playing something like one of these.
Yeah, no, I feel you, Tom. They are stressful and they are sometimes overly long. So I'm not gonna disagree with you there. Like I'm like, yup, I still enjoy it. I've been wanting to get a game of Resistance back to the table, but it's been kind of hard. Like people are kind of over this game or over social deduction, at least in the game group.
I mean, I think it's just kind of what I was saying. It's just like we've had this, once you've had this experience a few times, you kind of know what to expect from it. And if you aren't like, I don't know, if you aren't like super into just feeling like you're living in the movie The Thing for an hour, you're not necessarily going to like jump in on this, which is why I think Blood on the Clocktower is being as successful as it is, because it sort of shakes up the meta of this type of game. I think it brought something out in people that they'd been missing from the Resistance in Werewolf, even One Night Werewolf and things like this. And people were like, okay, well, I like what this is doing. Like, it's more complicated. There's a lot more like headache and setup, but the payouts are like are worth it. Somehow it manages to go a little above and beyond games like this. Personally, like this one a lot more than Secret Hitler specifically. So,
yep, that was the Resistance : Avalon.
Okay, well, enough of that bullshit, whatever the fuck we're talking about. The Resistance, Werewolf, Blood on the Clocktower. Who fucking cares? He's the killer, I'm the killer, you're the werewolf, I'm the vampire, you're the demon, he's the demon, no, she's the demon. No, that guy's the demon over there. No, I'm telling you, I saw his card. He's the demon. No, he made a whistling noise through his nose. No one wants to experience that. No one wants to go through that. What they really care about, Kenny, is coming to this show, listening in, tuning in every single week for the real, the true, the core, the beloved meat and potatoes of this podcast. And that's the main topic. And today's main topic is the Board Game Geek Hall of Fame. This is incredible, Kenny. Right as soon as we start this podcast, Board Game Geek goes, you know what we got to do? We've got to exonerate some of the oldest, most brown, boring ass games of all time as Hall of Famers. And they basically just created an entire list of content for us. It's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that we don't have to do our job because people are out there just doing it for us. It's like basically our equivalent of like React videos. Whoa, they did what? I give this game a boom, you know?
Oh, can I say how many booms I give each one of the Hall of Fame games? How are we going to structure this?
I don't know. I think I was just going to talk about them.
Oh, you know what we could do again?
We'll give them a boom.
Yeah, we give them a tier list from triple boom to no boom, boomless.
Okay. What's a boom? A boom is good, or boom is like should be on the list, or what?
I think boom is good.
Like you like the game? Like you like the game or good? Because there are games that I think are good that I don't like.
Well, yeah. How about you read off the game and I'll just give some kind of a reaction for each one, and we'll just see what we go.
You're
from
just
there,
like,
maybe.
oh, that one's a boom, and then you're like, this one's a boom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how this came about was a number of folks in both the BGG community as well as like part of the direct staff got together and did a thing for the 25th anniversary of Board Game Geek. And they put together a list. The requirement was that it be a game that had been like at least 5 years back or something. So very on brand.
No way. It wasn't like at least 5 years, was it?
It's, let me see. Hot girls, we have problems too. We're just like you.
We're just like you, except that we're hot.
We're hot.
So
Bear with me. 2015 and older, so 10 years old.
Okay, so they went even harder than we did, really.
Yeah. They had to have stood the test of time for 10 years. They were judged on by a jury assembling a number of different folks in the board game community. And the idea was to honor games that made meaningful contributions to the hobby. They didn't say this explicitly, but I would even argue that they made meaningful contributions to Board Game Geek because they're very centralized around Board Game Geek. If you're going to look at this versus like Spiel des Jahres, for example, it's going to be different games included here. And they're much more in line with things that either showed up at the top of Board Game Geek or were just heavily discussed. So with that, shall we boom these?
Yeah, let's do it.
1830. The first... Is that a question mark boom?
Yeah.
It's the first of the 18XX games.
Frankly, I just haven't played this one.
I haven't played it either.
No, but you've recently entered what you call your 18XX era. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say my train era. I'm still scared to do 18XX.
The OG.
But I'm very into trains right now. I didn't know that trains were cool. Nobody told me.
I don't know how you missed that one.
I will say, regardless of if I end up enjoying 18XX games or 1830 specifically, I think this absolutely deserves to be on. I am shocked that it made it on because there were some pretty good contenders and I thought surely like they're not going to go as deep as this, but they did. And I really appreciate them for doing that. And what a way to start off, like both alphabetically as well as like from history, because I think the way they issued the list was they did 5 years at a time. Yeah, 1830 originally released in 1986, created a legacy basically.
I'm interested in this. Kind of like what you were saying, like trains are cool. Like it's been surprising for you to experience these cube rail types of games.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely like very interested in getting this to the table someday. What I don't really want to do is like learn it.
I'll learn it. I'll teach it.
Hooray.
Next, Seven Wonders.
We talked about Seven Wonders not that long ago, and we were saying like we're kind of not down on it, but we were like, or at least I was like, this game might actually be a little dumb. That said, this 100% deserves its position in a Hall of Fame, I think. And I'm sure you'd agree.
Yeah, we talked pretty extensively about this one just offline. I don't think there was any other game at the time that really was like, yeah, you could do Magic Draft as a game. Like that kind of like blew people's minds. That being said, like I think there are games that do drafting better since then, but like if it's about recognizing these big moments, for sure, Seven Wonders deserves to be on the list.
Well, and what we weren't sure about, and I guess we still don't really know, is, did this create the genre? Because we know Magic Drafts go back quite a ways, but I don't know that anybody was like out there kind of putting the experience into a box until Seven Wonders. And we couldn't really tell you for sure, like, oh yeah, like, Magic Drafts were like already a well-established thing, blah, blah, blah. And so it was interesting that Antoine Bauzo was able to sort of bring that idea into this mainstream and approachable civilization building experience.
I'm trying to see right now what the earliest game is listed on BGG that has closed drafting. And it looks like there are some games from like the 1980s that allegedly have this mechanic, but I've never heard of them. Magic, Citadels, Fairy Tale, Notre Dame, Agricola, and Biblios. And then we hit Seven Wonders. Now, the interesting thing is that Fairy Tale is there. Because like Citadels, Notre Dame, and Agricola, I'm like, yeah, sure, but we're not really doing what Seven Wonders is doing with those. Fairy Tale, we're literally doing the same thing, and it comes out 6 years before that. So I'm like, eh. And then Biblios, I haven't played it, so I can't speak to it, but I do believe that Biblios has that drafting, and it comes out in 2007, so 3 years before. So I don't know. Maybe Seven Wonders isn't the progenitor, even if you take Magic the Gathering out of the question. It might be Fairy Tale.
So Fairy Tale sets the stage, perhaps, but I think what Seven Wonders did, and I could be mistaken, is it really just like brought it into the forefront, right?
Yeah, it definitely was the one that popularized it.
Even by our metrics, it more than holds up today.
Yep, agreed. I realize that if we talk about each and every one of them, we're not going to get through this.
Okay. Well, what if because we talked about making this like a multi-part thing. I don't know if you'd want to just talk about the first 5.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do the first 5. How many booms are you giving Seven Wonders? It gets half a boom from me.
It gets a full boom.
It gets a bow from me.
A bow?
Yeah, half a boom.
Oh, okay. Okay. It gets a boo.
A boo. Boop. Acquire. Sid Saxon.
Yeah.
I think just for representing Sid Saxon alone, that this deserves to be on here. This is the game that made me be like, oh, I didn't expect 1830 to be on, but I'm pleasantly surprised because I feel like when it comes to economics and buy low, sell high, Acquire is like the pinnacle. I wouldn't say it's the pinnacle, but it's the most exemplary. I mean, it's on my list for that reason, but like anything that's on my list that shows up on here, I'm like, yeah, good job,
Yeah. If it's in your own top 100, you're like,
that's how I judge everything in life. People are like, did you like watching The Substance? I was like, I don't know. It wasn't on my list of 100 tabletop games, so it was terrible. Right. Have you seen that movie yet?
No, I honestly, this is so tangential, but I honestly kind of don't want to.
Really?
Because it's like, I feel like I've already seen it.
No, it's good. I thought I knew what I was getting into. I even read the Wikipedia. It's a good movie when it's completely spoiled and it's still good.
Okay. That is really high praise. So that's interesting to hear. Because like, I basically felt like I've been hearing too much about it. And it's not so much that I think it's spoiled. I think it's just like, I already know what it's trying to say. Like too much. It's
definitely a little on the nose, but like, this is neither stood the test of time nor board games. So I apologize.
This is not 5 years old or a board game. What the hell?
I bet you The Substance was like, if only I could be 5 years younger, then they could talk about me. Get it? That's like a self-referential
it's like a reference to the,
to the movie. Yeah. All right, Acquire. Yeah, even if Acquire wasn't on its own like this incredibly important game, like it's Sid Saxon, you gotta have Sid Saxon on a list like this. You gotta have Knizia, you gotta have Sid Saxon, you gotta have Richard Garfield, and you gotta have Wolfgang Kramer. Those are the 4.
Yeah, they're the Mount Rushmore of board games.
Yeah. Like maybe Vlada, but like if Vlada doesn't show up, I'm like, that's fine. Yeah, and I don't remember who's on here, but TBD if those are all represented. I would have been happy with Can't Stop here, but I definitely think like Acquire is more of a oomph game, more of a boom game.
I feel like if Can't Stop had been on here, I would have like called the entire thing into question myself a little bit.
Interesting.
Like, really? Because like I love Can't Stop. I'm not sure that it's like Hall of Famer.
I don't think they would have made the list in a million years. So like we're all in hypotheticals here. Like I think it was always Acquire. It's always been Acquire.
It's all Acquire. Always has been.
Always has been. I guess that was the only other one I could think of for Sid Saxon. Number 4. Agricola.
Does anyone even know like what commercial you're referencing when you say it like that?
Hopefully. I thought Agricola was mid, and now I think it's based.
What? What happens? This is news to me.
It's still not like Nussfjord, but like it's a good game.
Wait, so are you gonna try Le Havre again? What's happening here?
No way. No.
What the fuck?
Give me another 2 years. Give me another 2 years.
Okay.
But you know what it was? I played Agricola first, and I was like, eh. And then I played Caverna, and I was like, eh. And then, but in my mind, Caverna was better than Agricola.
Gotcha.
And if I'm mid on Caverna and Agricola is worse, then I really don't like Agricola, or at least I think it's like even more mid. But then I played it solo and I had a good time, and then I played a little bit more, and I'm just like really appreciating how tight Agricola is. And the same thing that probably made young Kenny, this game is okay, is now making old Kenny go like, I just want to retire and live off the fat of the land, It's simultaneously cozy and stressful, and that's what I'm looking for in a game nowadays. For my old bones to warm by the fire.
Everything you're saying makes me think that the key to unlocking Le Havre for you is playing it solo.
You're probably
that's
right.
Exactly how
I gotta just play Le Havre at 2-player or solo. And I know that everything you're saying is 100% true. I refuse to play it.
You're like, I don't need another game.
Principle. There was a night where I like snapped at Tom and I was like, stop making me try to play Le Havre. There's so many games out there. Like, let me play things I enjoy.
Mm-hmm. He's like running away like a kid that won't eat broccoli.
Yeah, you're like, why are you booing me? I'm right.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think about Agricola?
It's a game. I'm just kidding. I've not played it that much, to be honest. So I don't know.
If you had to put an Uwe game on this list, what would you put?
I think Agricola, it sets the stage for like the board game geek vibe. You were saying this at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like this list is a very like board game geek list. And yeah, like Uwe Rosenberg games in general are like everything that the geeksters like want. They're fat, they're chunky, they're long. They make you feel like you're accomplishing something in the game space, so you don't have to think so hard about how sad your real life is. And for all those things, like, I commend it.
My favorite game of Uwe's is definitely Bonanza, but similar to the Can't Stop thing, I don't think I would ever have vouched for Bonanza to, like, even if I was on the jury, I wouldn't have been like, let's put Bonanza on, like, I don't want to be stoned by all the Blood on the Clocktower players,
We have such a violent audience at this point. They're throwing rocks at us. They're murdering us for our hot takes. Like, I feel like our takes aren't even that spicy.
Yeah, they're like, they're the demons. We found the demons.
Yeah. They're trying to pretend that they like board games. Actually, they hate all of them, and they won't shut up about this Knizia guy.
We're just Knizia plants.
Yes.
Paid for by 20th Century Games and Bitewing Games. They both have like sponsored us to just like spread misinformation.
Mm-hmm. And whoever published that new version of Medici.
Oh yeah. Already. Well, no, because we shat on that. Remember? Or at least I did. I shat on it.
Was
you liked
nice.
it.
I thought it was a good.
I poo-pooed. I was like, this is the worst Knizia I've ever played.
You're like, I can't tell the colors apart. And I was like, it wasn't as hard as you made it sound I guess, to me.
Oh my God. All right. Fifth and final. Brass Lancashire. Yes. Boom. Yeah. I feel so validated. I know they weren't allowed to put Brass Birmingham on here, but like when I saw it was Lancashire on there, I was like,
you're like, yeah, that's right, you fucking nerds. Birmingham #1 at the geek rank. What? You look so stupid now voting 10, giving that game a 10 when they got the OG on here.
When I saw that, I felt the emotion that I feel like people get when they watch their sports team that is not favored to win the match, and they come out ahead at the end. Like I assume that's what it feels like.
At the BSU Broncos at the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, yeah, baby, that's what I'm talking about. You know, just like going nuts.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely I think I was at work when I read it, but I was like, I definitely did like a little like, yes, you know.
I'm just picturing you exactly like Kip in Napoleon Dynamite. You like
pretty
rolls
much,
the bowling ball. You're like, yes.
I'm just really happy this made it on. They could have been like, well, we would put Birmingham, but it's not eligible, so we're just not going to put any of it. But they were like, no, let's put Lancashire.
I mean, Lancashire, to be fair, it's like it is just a second edition to the original game, Brass, right?
I think Brass is the one that's really on this list.
Right.
Talk about not hot takes. Us gushing about Brass, like that's like the most
mainstream thing ever. I'm sorry, but it's like it's just fucking like true. If you doubt us, go play it and then come back and tell us how we were right.
If anybody is ever like, oh, those two, they're just contrarians. They just like are mean to games for no reason. Yeah, we're big fans of the #1 game on Board Game Geek, and we're also big fans of like one of the most influential, loved designers of all time. Like, yeah, we're really controversial. Like, we have our preferences. Sometimes they deviate, and sometimes they agree 100%. And like, Brass is a good example. Brass is a great game. There's a good reason it's so high up. Love playing it. Very happy to see it here. Gets a lot of booms from me. It gets a boom.
I like it, like legit. If you're just out there listening to this and you're like, I don't get it. It's like, have you played it?
Well, I will say this. I don't think it's for everyone. Yeah. And I think that people who tried it that don't like it, they are valid. Like it's not like, oh, well, you probably didn't play it right. Or like, did you really like, it's not like that. Like, I think legitimately there are people who are going to play this game and they're like, I don't get it. Or even just like, I get it and it just wasn't for me. I don't think it's universally accessible, I guess is what I'm saying.
I guess I probably make it sound like...
There's no disagreeing, though, in my opinion, that there's quality here.
I feel like I probably am making it sound like, anybody that plays this is going to agree. And I'm definitely being hyperbolic. I could totally see somebody pretty much hating this game. But, yeah, there's no denying its impact on the hobby. The way it kind of defines the hobby.
Yep. Agreed. So let's kind of wrap up. Those are the first 5. There's 25 on here, and at some point we'll revisit this. We'll pace it out, so it's not just like 5 weeks of this. Or maybe we won't revisit it. Maybe people are like, that was a boring episode. Let us know.
Yeah, tell us. Do you want us to give our hot takes, our boom count for every single one of the Hall of Fame, or was this more than enough?
If we do come back to it, it'll be in a while. Like, we're going to spread this out so as to not exhaust people.
Thanks, Board Game Geek, for assembling the most topical games for our podcast.
It's a great list. We haven't gone through all of it, but like
list.
I can say there's not a single game on the list, spoilers, that like I'm opposed to being on it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever said that about a list ever when it comes to board games.
Oh, okay. Or just lists in general.
When it comes to board games, I always have a problem with X or Y. And like, this is the first time that I was like, well, no, there's nothing. There's nothing. Like, maybe there's things that weren't included, but even those, I understand why. You have limited slots. And then there's none on the list. And I'm like, why is this here? You know? Well done. We'll have the link in the descriptions, obviously.
Check it out. Okay, Kenny, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you, everybody, if you're listening to this. We really appreciate it. We cannot thank you enough if you're actually tuning into this. You're incredible. Treat yourself. Thank you especially to Michael, Tyler, Devon, and Josh of the Boise RainBeaus for that awesome segue music. And thank you to Bonehouse for letting us use your song, Rot, as our opening theme. By the way, everybody, we're going to be, I'm going to keep saying this until we get there, and it's coming up soon, SaltCon in Layton, Utah, February 27th to March 2nd. Those are the dates for the convention. If you want to just see us, you only have to pay for Saturday. That's because our live show is on March 1st, Saturday at 11 a.m., Mountain Standard Time. Come on down, check us out, ask us some questions. We're going to be, trying to have our fun with it and make it a good event for anybody, even if you aren't a listener of the show. So we'll see how the turnout is and what that's like. We haven't really done an event at a con. Well, I mean, yeah, this will be our first live event in general, so it's bound to be a clusterfuck, and that tends to be fun.
We're also doing Tree Fort the week of March 26th. We don't know what day yet. It is free. You do not need a wristband. You can just walk in, and it'll be open to families. We'll try not to cuss.
Yeah, we'll probably have to not cuss at the SaltCon one too. Huh?
Yeah.
So hopefully that is not the part of our brand that you're really sold on.
You can just go play Dead of Winter or something, The zombies come out in the snow. Fuck, it's cold.
That was like such a northern line. Just then, anyway.
If you're loving the cast, share with a friend or on Reddit or on BGG. It's the best thing you can do to help us grow. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, send us an email at shelfstablecast@gmail.com. All of this and more in the show notes. Tom, what topic do you want to do? Tom, what topic do you want to do next week, which is in the past?
Next week, Kenny, we've got a very special guest on our podcast, Jacob Kinney from Phoenix Fire Games, our friendly local game store here in Idaho. Talk to us about what it's like to run a game store. What are some of the secrets you might want to know before you try and open up your own, and all sorts of other stuff.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.